The wind rolled across the dry Montana plain like a warning, kicking up dust as Declan Ward stepped onto the porch of his lonely ranch. He had no idea his life was about to split in half, the years before today and everything that would come after. He only knew one thing. A stranger was arriving on the afternoon stagecoach, and that stranger was supposed to be his wife. He wasn't ready. Declan stood there with his jaw tight, boots planted in the dirt like he needed the earth to hold him in place. He had asked for something simple, something he thought would keep his life steady. A quiet woman who could cook, help with chores, and not ask for much more than shelter and food. He wasn't looking for love. He didn't believe he had any left to give. But the stagecoach rattled closer, bouncing over the rocky road, and a strange feeling twisted in his stomach. Fear, hope, regret. He couldn't name it. He only knew he hadn't felt anything this strong in years. The coach came to a stop in a cloud of dust. The door opened, and the world seemed to still. She stepped down. Not the fragile, proper woman he imagined. Not someone soft or timid. The woman who stood before him carried herself like she had walked through storms and gotten up every time. Her dress was neat but worn from travel. Her dark blonde hair was pinned back, but strands had slipped loose in the wind. And when she lifted her chin, her eyes were steady, guarded, and full of a strength that hit Declan straight in the chest. Amelia Cross, the woman who would become his wife before sundown. And she was nothing like he expected. Declan swallowed hard, suddenly aware of the dirt on his shirt and the tired lines around his eyes. "Ma'am," he said, trying to sound steady. "I'm Declan Ward." His voice didn't sound like his own. Rougher. Thicker. She looked him over with a calm expression that unsettled him more than any storm. Then she gave a small nod. "I'm Amelia. Thank you for sending for me." Her voice was soft but strong, the kind that carried more truth than decoration. And just like that, Declan realized something that made his heart drop into his boots. He had no idea what he was doing. He forced himself to turn and lift her trunk from the coach, but the weight nearly threw him off balance. It wasn't heavy from belongings. It was heavy because his entire life was shifting, and he felt it in every bone in his body. As they headed toward the small cabin that sat near the main barn, Amelia took in everything with quiet, sharp eyes. She didn't hide her thoughts. She didn't pretend not to notice the rough boards, the simple roof, the lonely feel of the entire place. But she didn't look disappointed, only thoughtful. Inside the cabin, Declan felt the silence press down on him. Everything suddenly looked too plain, too empty. Too much like a place meant for one person, not two. He cleared his throat. "I know it's small and simple, but it's solid. I built most of it myself." Amelia touched the back of a wooden chair, her fingers gentle but sure. "It feels lived in," she said quietly. "Honest." He blinked. He'd expected questions, complaints, worry. Instead, she gave him something he hadn't felt in years. Understanding, and that made it harder to breathe. Declan stepped back, needing space he couldn't find. "We can go into town in the morning," he said. "Get what you need. Supplies. Whatever makes this place more comfortable." She met his eyes, and for a second he felt seen in a way that made him uneasy. "Comfort is something you build," she said. "Not something you buy." Declan didn't know what to say to that, so he didn't say anything at all. They worked side by side through the afternoon, settling her things, straightening the cabin, doing small chores. And though they didn't speak much, the silence felt different now. Not empty, not heavy, just new. When evening fell, they rode into town for the small ceremony. The sky burned orange behind the mountains, and Amelia sat on the horse with calm confidence, keeping her balance like she'd done it her whole life. Another surprise. Declan kept stealing glances at her, trying to understand this woman who didn't match anything he'd prepared himself for. At the simple church, Reverend Mitchell finished the quiet vows, and Declan placed a ring on her finger with hands that shook more than he wanted to admit. When she looked up at him, her eyes softened for the briefest moment, and something inside him shifted, because he finally understood what had scared him all along. He didn't want convenient. He didn't want simple. He wanted her. But wanting was dangerous. Wanting meant risk. Wanting meant losing everything if it went wrong. So he forced himself to stay distant, to keep walls around his heart. For both their sakes. Or so he told himself. By the time they returned to the ranch, night had filled the sky. Stars spilled across the darkness like a promise he didn't trust. The air turned colder, quieter. Inside the cabin, Amelia stood just inside the door, her face unreadable in the dim light. She set her gloves on the table, the ring catching the lantern glow as she moved. Declan felt words rise inside him, words he didn't dare give voice to, words he wasn't ready to name yet. So instead, he said the safest thing he could manage. "You can take the bedroom. I'll sleep out here." Her eyes flickered, just enough for him to notice. "All right?" But the look she gave him before she turned away held something he couldn't ignore. Not disappointment, not fear, something deeper. And it struck him like the first crack of lightning before a storm hits. He had married a stranger. But it wasn't the danger in that truth that unsettled him. It was the hope. The next morning rose cold and gray, a thin layer of frost covering the ground outside the cabin. Declan woke early on the narrow cot he had dragged into the main room. His back ached, his mind was restless, and his heart felt heavier than usual. He lay there for a moment, staring at the wooden beams above him, wondering what kind of fool married a stranger and then didn't know how to speak to her. He heard soft movement from the bedroom. Amelia was already awake. Declan pushed himself up and lit the stove, trying to shake off the strange nervousness sitting under his skin. He wasn't afraid of hard work, storms, or wild animals. But somehow, talking to the woman he'd married yesterday felt like the hardest thing he had ever faced. A moment later, Amelia stepped out of the bedroom. Her hair was tied back loosely, and she wore a simple dress that made her look strong, but still gentle somehow. She paused when she saw him, studying him quietly the way she studied everything around her. "Good morning," she said softly. "Morning," he replied, clearing his throat. The silence stretched between them, not sharp, but uncertain. Declan wasn't used to having someone else in the cabin. He wasn't used to anyone watching him, thinking about him, noticing him. He didn't know what to do with it. "I made coffee," he offered. She nodded and moved closer, wrapping her hands around the wooden cup he passed her. "Thank you." They drank in silence for a moment, until Amelia finally spoke. "You don't have to sleep out here." Declan froze. She kept her eyes on the cup, as if the steam told her something important. "I know this arrangement wasn't meant to be romantic, but I don't want you to be uncomfortable in your own home." Quote, "This is fine," he said quickly, too quickly. "I don't want to crowd you." Amelia lifted her gaze to him, and her eyes were full of quiet understanding. "Declan, I'm not afraid of you." Those simple words hit him harder than he expected. Before he could respond, a sharp neigh split the morning air outside. Declan stiffened. "That's hope," he muttered, grabbing his coat. "Something's wrong." Amelia followed him without hesitation, and they reached the barn just as the young foe kicked at her stall, wild with panic. Declan rushed in first, steadying her. "What's wrong with her?" Amelia asked, voice tight with worry. Declan ran his hand down the foe's neck, calming her. Something spooked her. A coyote, maybe. But Amelia didn't look convinced. Her eyes scanned the ground outside, sharp and alert. "Declan, look!" Tracks, fresh, and not from a coyote. "Wolves," Declan said, jaw tightening. "Too close to the barn." His mind raced. Wolves meant danger. Wolves meant loss. He'd spent years working to keep his herd safe. Losing animals meant losing income. Losing income meant the ranch wouldn't make it through winter. He loaded his rifle without thinking, muscle memory taking over. "Stay inside," he said, voice firm. "No," Amelia said calmly, reaching for a lantern. "You need light." And another set of eyes. "Amelia, it's dangerous. So is letting you go out there alone." He stared at her, stunned again by the strength behind her gentle way of speaking. She wasn't reckless. She wasn't trying to prove anything. She just didn't want him facing something alone, and he realized no one had stood beside him like this in years. He didn't argue again. They circled the barn together, searching the ground. The tracks led toward the ridge, but stopped near the edge of the property. Whoever, or whatever, had been there was gone for now. Declan lowered his rifle. "We'll need to reinforce the barn," he said. "Today." "I'll help," Amelia replied. "You don't have to." "I know," she said. "I want to." They worked through the morning, hauling boards, hammering nails, checking gates and fences. Declan found himself watching her when she wasn't looking. She moved with purpose, every action steady and sure. She tied her hair back with a strip of cloth when it kept falling in her face, and she didn't complain once about the work. By late afternoon, they stood side by side, covered in dust, breathing hard from the labor. "You did good work today," Declan said quietly. "So did you." Their eyes met, and something warm flickered between them. Not romance, not yet, but respect, trust, the beginning of something real. As evening settled in, the sky turning shades of rose and gold, they walked back toward the cabin. Hope trotted close behind, calmer now, nudging Amelia with her soft nose. "She likes you," Declan said, unable to hide the surprise in his voice. Amelia smiled faintly. "Animals sense things. She knows you care for her, and she knows." She hesitated. "What?" Declan asked. "She knows I care too." They stood there for a moment, the quiet settling around them like a blanket. The ranch didn't feel as lonely as it had yesterday, and Declan didn't feel as guarded. Inside the cabin, Amelia lit a lantern while Declan set out the supper he'd prepared earlier. They ate together at the small wooden table, the warmth between them growing in slow, steady steps. Afterward, Declan leaned back and exhaled. "Amelia, I don't know how to do all this. I don't know how to talk about things the way a husband should. I don't know how to be what you expect." "I don't expect anything," she said gently. "Just honesty. And a chance to learn each other." Her words hit him like a soft blow. Not painful, just real. Amelia stood and walked toward the bedroom, pausing in the doorway. "You can sleep inside tonight if you want. Not because I expect anything, but because this is your room too, your home too." Declan's chest tightened. He nodded once. "All right." She gave a small smile and disappeared into the room. Declan stared at the closed door for a long moment before blowing out the lantern. It was the first night he didn't feel alone in 3 long years. The storm rolled across the plains with a force that made the air feel heavy long before the first flake of snow fell. By late afternoon, the sky had darkened into a thick sheet of gray that warned every rancher to take shelter. Declan stepped outside, let the wind hit his face, and knew they had only a little time. He returned to the cabin. "We need to prepare before this storm gets worse." Amelia nodded. "Tell me what you need." They moved quickly. They brought in firewood, checked the barn doors, covered the tools, and made sure every animal was secured. Hope stayed close to Amelia, restless in the rising wind. Amelia rubbed the foal's neck. "It's all right. You're safe here," she whispered to the trembling animal. Declan paused to watch her. She was steady, even in the cold. She didn't shy from hard work. She didn't complain about freezing hands or the biting wind. She simply helped, like she had been doing this all her life. By nightfall, the storm hit with full force. Snow slammed against the windows, and the wind roared like something angry. Declan bolted the door and stepped back. "This one might last for days," he said. Amelia added wood to the fire. "Then we face it together." Those words warmed something deep inside him that had been cold for years. Hours passed. The storm only grew louder. Declan checked the window again and again, unable to sit still. "You're worried about the horses," Amelia said softly. "Always, when a storm hits like this. Then we should check on them." He stared at her, surprised she'd walk willingly into this kind of storm. But she was already putting on her coat. He tied a rope around his waist, and then tied the other end around hers. "This keeps you with me," he said. Her voice softened. "I'm not letting go." They pushed through the storm. Snow struck their faces like needles. The barn was almost lost in the white. When they reached it, Declan felt his heart lurch. The side door had blown open. Snow filled the stalls. The horses were frantic, especially Hope, who kicked at her stall and cried out. "Look!" Amelia said, pointing. Hope's leg was wedged between two boards. "Get the lantern," Declan said. She moved fast. He pried the boards apart while Amelia soothed the foal with a steady voice. Hope's leg came free, and Amelia stroked her until the shaking stopped. "You handled her like you've done this your whole life," Declan said, breathing hard. "My father taught me," she answered softly. They secured the barn and fought back through the storm. By the time they reached the cabin, Amelia was shaking from cold. Declan rushed to her. "Sit by the fire. You're freezing." She tried to argue, but her hands trembled. He wrapped a blanket around her shoulders. "You scared me out there." Her eyes lifted. "You scared me too." There was something in her voice that pulled him toward her without thought. When her hand touched his cheek, he leaned in and kissed her. Her breath caught in surprise. For a moment he feared he had misread everything. Then she kissed him back, steady and warm, her fingers curling against his jaw. The storm screamed outside, but inside the cabin everything went quiet. When they pulled apart, Amelia whispered, "Tell me what this is for you." He swallowed hard. "I want you, not for duty, not because we signed an agreement. I want you because you make this place feel alive again, because you walked into my life and nothing has been the same." Her voice shook. "I came here looking for a place to belong, and somewhere along the way, that place became you." He touched her hand. "Stay, because this is real." "It is real," she said. "I'm not going anywhere." That night, they rested beside each other for the first time, not from obligation, but from something deeper. The storm roared against the cabin, but inside there was warmth and steady breath and the quiet feeling of two lonely lives beginning to link together. By the third day, the storm eased. The world outside was buried in snow. They spent hours clearing paths and checking on every animal. Hope followed Amelia everywhere, limping only a little. By sunset, the land glowed soft gold under the snow. Amelia stood beside him on the porch, watching the sky shift colors. "This place doesn't feel lonely anymore," she said. "It isn't," Declan answered. She leaned against him, her shoulder fitting beneath his arm. "I never expected this life when I answered your advertisement." "I never expected you," Declan said. She turned toward him. "Then let's build this life as true partners. As husband and wife in every way that matters." Declan rested his forehead against hers. "We already are." Snow sparkled under the fading light. Hope neighed from the barn. The wind calmed at last. They hadn't started with love. They hadn't planned for love. But love had found them anyway, strong and steady as the mountains around them.